Something I found interesting about legendary director Christopher Nolan's latest film Dunkirk is how it was cut. Dunkirk constantly intercuts between three very related storylines: the beach, the sea, and the air. Which movies do all the time, by the way. A few examples that spring to mind are City of God, Empire Strikes Back, and my personal favorite, Pulp Fiction. But what amazes me about Dunkirk is the fact that it defies the very idea of time. Before I start explaining what I mean by that radical exclamation, I want to talk about the very tool that Nolan uses to do just that. I want to talk about the intercut. Now, the intercut is a tool that can be used to show the audience multiple events occurring simultaneously, like in Empire Strikes Back, and beautifully in Back to the Future. However, the intercut can also be used to show the audience multiple events occurring at different times, like in Pulp Fiction,
Yes, you did, Brett. You tried to fuck him. And Marcellus Wallace don't like to be fucked by anybody except Mrs. Wallace.
or Forrest Gump.
I bet if I think about it real hard, I could remember my first pair of shoes. Mama said they'd take me anywhere. She said they was my magic shoes.
All right, Forrest.
However, one of my favorite uses of the intercut is in Francis Ford Coppola's masterpiece, The Godfather.
Michael Francis Rizzi, do you renounce Satan?
I do renounce him.
And all his works?
I do renounce them.
And all his pomps?
I do renounce them.
Michael Rizzi, will you be baptized?
I will.
In nomine Patris, et Filii, et Spiritus Sancti. Michael Rizzi, go in peace, and may the Lord be with you. Amen.
In this scene, Coppola uses the intercut as a rhetorical device. We know he didn't just decide to cut between these two scenes because he felt like it. Coppola is using the intercut in a way that begs us to find the irony between these two events. On the one hand, Michael pledges in the name of the Lord that he renounces Satan and all of his works. On the other hand, he hired assassins to commit one of the worst sins known to man. But although used wonderfully, Coppola wasn't the first to invent the intercut. No, the first person to use the intercut was a little-known filmmaker named, you guessed it, D.W Griffith. Although he first played with the idea in his film after many years, he perfected it in his masterpiece Intolerance in the year 1916. In the film Intolerance, Griffith intercuts between 4 different eras. And at the time, this had never really been done before, and neither had a lot of techniques that we now see as cliché. In fact, it was so experimental and so brand new that audiences at the time couldn't really handle it, and it actually ended up to be a huge commercial flop. I can go on and on about the innovations in this film that we now see as generic, but who better to tell you than Orson Welles?
Good evening. This is Orson Welles introducing
this festival of great films of the silent years. And we have a great film tonight. You know, much too much literature is written on the subject of movies. And a lot of it has been written about me, as it's written about all sorts of people who don't deserve it. And they give me credit for innovations which I'm not responsible for, and inventions that I didn't invent. And then other people come along and say I don't deserve the credit, and I want to tell you that I've never claimed that credit. I mention all this because the film you're going to see tonight deserves all the credit that can possibly be given to it. And there is almost nothing in the entire vocabulary of the cinema which you won't find in this film. There's also a lot of it which is terribly old-fashioned, a lot that was old and dusty even at the moment that this was made. And you're also going to see an awful lot that would be new tomorrow because of the genius of the man. His taste and his culture, his background belonged to quite another time.
Okay, so now that we know what an intercut is and where it came from, let's talk about Dunkirk and what I meant earlier when I said that it defies the very idea of time. It's no secret that films can stretch out time or speed time up. Different movies span out over different periods of time. Movies like Shawshank Redemption that take place over a 20-year time span are good examples. You also have movies like Do the Right Thing that take place over the course of a day. Then you have movies like 12 Angry Men that take place in real time. The beauty about Dunkirk is that it does all of the above. It shows what happens on the beach as it takes place in 1 week. It shows what happens at the sea as it takes place in a day. And it shows what happens in the air as it takes place over the course of an hour. If you think about it, that's not really that hard to do. But it is hard to do it in a way that makes perfect sense. It's done so well, in fact, that even Forrest Gump would be able to follow along.
I gotta pay.
Take this scene, for example. This is from the perspective of the sky. One pilot watches as the other crash lands into the water. He notices that there is a rescue boat going to save him, and the second pilot signals that he's okay. This scene clocks in at 24 seconds. Here's that same scene from later in the movie, but from the perspective of the second pilot at sea. The pilot crash lands and the rescue boat notices him. Water starts to fill the plane, so the pilot tries to make an escape, but the door won't open fully. It is now when we realize that he isn't sailing to show that he's okay, he's signaling for help. And even though this is technically the exact same scene, this time it clocks in at 69 seconds, nearly 3 times longer than the first scene. In Dunkirk, Christopher Nolan took what the innovators of yesterday gave him, thought about it, and put a twist on it so that the innovators of tomorrow could do the same. Griffith did it, then Wells did it, Coppola did it, and now Nolan. This is the type of thing that we'll hopefully be discussing here at Film Novation. Hence the name Film Novation.
Picasso had a saying, he said, "Good artists copy, great artists steal."
This is the end, beautiful friend. This is the end, my own